Well, I almost missed it, but thank goodness I saw on Wednesday that we have a Friday the 13th this week. Doesn't happen all that often. So, I knew that I had to watch Friday the 13th. Now, I've seen all of these at least once, but most of them I've only seen as part of a big long binge of all of them, which makes it very difficult for me to remember specifics from each individual film. So my plan is, and I have no idea how long this will stay a thing, because this plan, by its nature, will take nearly a decade. But the plan is for me to do this every Friday the 13th, but go to the next one in the series. So next Friday the 13th, which isn't until next year, I'll do part 2, and then the next one I'll part 3, and so on. Will I keep that going for 8 years or however long it takes? I don't know, but that's what we're going with for now. So Friday the 13th, to me, this is kind of weird, this is kind of backwards. But when I was younger, I was a fan of the Scream films. And the first Scream film has the little prelude where the killer is asking trivia questions over the phone to... I can't remember who Drew Barrymore's character is in that movie. But one of the questions that he asked is who's the killer in Friday the 13th. And she mistakenly says, Jason. And he's like, no, it was Mrs. Voorhees. You're an idiot. Blah, 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 blah. Now you're going to die. And so to me, that's like the thing about part 1 in my head. That has always been the thing since before I ever saw it was Jason's not the killer yet. And it's one of those things where in that movie, Scream, it's implied that most people have forgotten that. Most people don't know that, right? Oh, it's tricky trivia. Ah, gotcha. And I've never really gotten that perception in real life, and I don't know if it's because nobody thinks that, or if the fact that that was featured in a Scream movie made everybody remember that. But like, I don't know. I'm also just not in a situation where I'm randomly asking strangers horror trivia questions. I don't know why. That sounds like fun. I should do it. Anyway, that's like the thing for me in this movie, is that it's the Friday the 13th movie without Jason. I have no more to that sentence. I don't know why I stopped like that. I've got some notes. So one of my first notes I wrote down was freeze frames are scary, because in the prelude to this, which takes place in 1958, we don't see who the killer is yet. We don't know who the killer is until an hour and 15 minutes into this hour and a half long movie, which I think works well, because that's kind of the point, is that you don't know who it is. So we are seeing from the killer's point of view as she kills these 2 camp counselors. And the first one, we don't really see what happens, but then we get a shot of, I think his neck has been slit and blood's coming out. Nope, that's a later one. We don't see much. We see a little bit of a reaction shot, but we don't see much. And then she's going after the girl, and it freeze frames as she screams in the audio. And so I wrote down, freeze frames are scary. Now, I haven't read all of the trivia for this recently. I have in the past. But I was skimming through some of it, and apparently they intentionally held back on those early kills to set a low expectation for the viewer for what was to come, so that later on, when the kills get more gory and more bloody and more intense, the viewer is surprised because we had this other idea. I think that totally works, because like I said, I've seen this movie before, and still, when I see those first 2, I kind of had it in my head, and I wrote it. I was like, I guess this isn't as gruesome as I remember it being. That must be the sequels, right? That must have been something that came later. But they got me. It worked, even though I've seen it before. So I think that was a great idea, because that's not uncommon for the time. To just freeze frame or, pan away or whatever, just have somebody scream their heads off, even though we don't actually see anything happen. That fit in with other things that were going on. So it's not like that's shocking to an audience member of that time. It's a little strange now, but understanding the time frame that it came in, or that it came out during, it makes sense. But then it also makes the payoff later on so much better. Um, and then I wrote another note that said music actually appropriate to the score, question mark, or I'm sorry, to the scene, question mark. And the reason I wrote that note is because some of these, I went to point to the cases, but they're not there. I'm filming this while also filming a bunch of videos for werewolf movies that will be released in October. But I've been watching a lot of old horror movies lately, and in so many of them, the music is either just relentless the whole time, regardless of what's on screen, or like even if it's not overbearing, it just doesn't match what's happening on screen, and it's clear that they just have some music, and so they're just putting it in, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't match what's going on. Now, again, I read in the trivia afterwards that they only have music when the killer is present, and the rest of the time there's no music. And I didn't pick up on that, but like it works really well, and most of the time there's just silence. And for the setting that you're in, out in the middle of nowhere at this camp, that works really well. And then there is a purpose to having the music there because it builds intensity when there's intensity happening on screen. So it's not like it's necessarily, I don't know the process, but it's not like it's necessarily specifically crafted, this melody is to go with this image, but the idea of the music serves this purpose and this function rather than just, oh yeah, put music in the background. It's very different than a lot of other old horror movies that I've been watching lately, which have been a lot of them. So I wonder if there was a point in cinema history where score and soundtrack and background music really started to be more focused on rather than just something that was there, or if it's just always kind of been depending on who's making the movie. I don't know. I am not plugged into the world of movie soundtracks and scoring film and things like that, but that's something that I'm wondering about now is was that kind of relentless nonstop music score common, or is it just happened to be in the types of movies that I'm watching it was common for those, but not necessarily everything else, whereas now, you know, people will score a movie very precisely, and this is specifically lining up with this image and these scenes and this character and things like that. So that's something that it's got me interested to pay more attention to in movies that I watch moving forward. Frustratingly, we then jump forward to the present day, which it doesn't tell us when it is. I don't know why movies do that. Like, on the one hand, I get that you don't want to say what year you're in, because then that's going to date it earlier than it would be dated. So this movie was released in 1980. So if they said 1980, then if someone's watching this in 1982 or 1983, they might be like, wow, this movie's kind of old, right? But like, it's going to get dated eventually anyway. So if you believe in the longevity of your movie, just put the date in so that people watching it a decade plus down the line don't have to go and look it up, which, granted, it's not that difficult for me to grab my phone and look it up, but it took me out of the movie because I wanted to know how much later it had been, right? 22 years later. You could have just said 22 years later, but they said present day. So that's a tiny little nitpick, but it happens all the time in movies and it bothers the crap out of me. Stop saying present day. Stop saying the not too distant future. Put dates on your movies, because they're going to be dated anyway. So you might as well make it clear in the story that you're telling. I got a lot of notes where I was just writing down character names to try to keep track of them, and I started writing down how different characters got killed. I don't need to go through all that. At one point I wrote 100 ways not to kill a snake, because there's a scene where they kill a snake, which apparently they really kill a snake, which, you know, nowadays, oh my goodness, you killed a snake on screen. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not PETA, but, you know, so many times you see, like with Candyman movies, it's like the bees were specially trained and they had a special bee vacuum that would get them off of the actors without harming them. And I'm just like, I don't care, kill a bee. I'm not a bee snake loving person, but that's just me, you know? That's fine. But during this scene, they're trying to kill the snake and people are like swinging pillows at nothing and just like all sorts of stuff. And there's one guy with a machete and it's like, yeah, that'll work. I don't think a pillow's going to do much to it. So that was kind of funny. So then we start getting into the meat and potatoes of the kills, and I wrote down some shown, some not, budget or creativity. So I wrote down, not counting the two in 1958, I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people that die, but the only ones that we actually see get killed, there's 1, 2, 3? I feel like there's a couple more and I just missed writing it down, but there's some that we are clearly shown very unrestricted how they died. And then there are others that we see a reaction shot, but we don't know exactly what happens. And then there are others that we presume died, but that's confirmed later when their body, falls down out of something or other. And so I wonder if, because the deaths that we see are unique. One of them's with a knife. One of them's with an arrow stabbed through the throat. One of them is with an axe. One of them is presumably being shot with arrows, but his body is pinned up with arrows. One of them is a beheading with a machete. So they're all unique, the ones that we see. So I wonder if the reason that we didn't see all of them is it because they couldn't think of more creative ways to kill people, and so they didn't want to redo the same method twice? Or is it just because they didn't have enough budget to show every kill? Because that stuff would have been expensive back in the day. I don't think it's a problem. It's just something that I noticed because I feel like, and again, maybe I'm wrong because I haven't really absorbed each of the sequels on its own, but my not perspective, but I don't know, my understanding is that as the sequels go on, we see more deaths, and new and creative deaths are part of the fun of the sequels. And so I wonder if they were kind of out of ideas and then realized moving forward, okay, we gotta come up with some new stuff, and that, does that influence how many characters are in that movie? Is how many deaths you can think of? Or is it just that they got more of a budget in the later movies because this one was such a success? I don't know. I'm just curious about it. So we finally get the reveal of Mrs. Voorhees, like I said, an hour and 15 minutes into this movie that's an hour and a half long. Unlike some of the other horror movies, though, where, the creature itself doesn't show up until way late in the movie. She's been there. She's been present. It's just that we don't know who it is. So we get 15 minutes of the movie where we understand what's happening and why. And I think it works well. I like the reveal. We don't understand right away that she's the killer. But then, I do have a couple nitpicks towards the end. I wrote, why the fake out with Annie? Because when Annie sees her, she's just like, oh, I'm an old friend of the Christies. I'm Mrs. Voorhees. Everything's going to be fine. Let's go inside. It's all good. I'm like, why? Once she's there, and she's within reach, you've got your knife on you, why not just kill her? And I wonder if part of it is because Mrs. Voorhees seems to have some mental mental issues aren't the word I'm looking for, but some sort of detachment from reality. Because she's got, her son's voice in her head and she's speaking with her dead son who no longer exists. So I wondered if part of it was just a mental thing, but it seems odd that would have only happened with the last one, because we don't see that happen with anyone else, but I guess not everyone else had their death shown. So obviously we see a little bit of what happened with Annie, but she wasn't faking her out. She just wasn't talking, at least not on screen. And then Steve would have already known who she was. So when he's like, oh, hey, it's you. What are you doing here? It doesn't seem from my end that she's faking him out, pretending to just be a whatever. It's just that he recognizes her and then she kills him. So it's strange to me that if it's a mental thing, it only happens to take place when it's convenient for the story to do this twist. But maybe she's just at the point where she knows there's only one left, and so she wants to play with her a little bit. I don't know. Maybe it's like a Pennywise thing. Just a little bit weird. because there's not. I just watched it and I was looking for it and I don't remember anything. So unless I missed it, there's not like a big thing that happens that switches her mindset into killing her. Like Alice doesn't like say anything or do anything to trigger a change. It's just that suddenly she decides, she starts going off on, I couldn't let them open this place again. Jason died. He was swimming. Blah, blah, blah. People weren't paying attention. And she just like starts down that. And that leads her to then trying to kill Alice. And I'm just confused as to why she didn't do that from the start. Don't think it ruins the movie. Just kind of a weird thing. So then, and during that whole bit, Mrs. Voorhees mentions that Friday the 13th is Jason's birthday, which I don't remember. I don't know. I'm not, speaking is difficult. I don't remember that being a part of the sequels, but I also don't remember being a part of this movie, so it could just be that I'm misremembering. But I feel like if your franchise is named after the day, like, lean into that more. Make it more of a through line throughout these movies, because the Halloween movies, obviously, they all take place on Halloween, and like then you get the thing, it's like, stop transferring Michael Myers on Halloween. This happens every time, right? Figure it out, guys. So it's weird to have a franchise named after a day that's supposedly affects people in the real world and have it also be relevant in the world of the movie, but not really focus on that too much. I don't know. I say lean into that more because that's not something that I remembered. But yeah, I think that would have been something interesting to play up a little bit more. Is like, it's not just because I feel like most of them. Could be wrong. I feel like most of them don't really have anything to do with Friday the 13th. It's just that the first one happened to be on Friday the 13th because they chose the title before they even really had a story, and then they just had to work it into the story. But I'm like, this franchise should be called, Jason or whatever. But if you played up that angle, then the title of the series would make a lot more sense. Anyway, moving on. So then Alice runs to Mrs. Voorhees' Jeep to try to drive away and escape. But she opens it up, and the dead body of Annie is in there, who she doesn't even know who that is. She hasn't met her yet. Maybe she could put two and two together, but she's got a lot going on. But she just sees it, and then runs away screaming. I'm just like, I know it's a dead body, but get in the Jeep and drive away. Like, I know it's weird, right? But like, that's still your best chance of escaping in that moment is driving the Jeep. You're gonna let that dead body keep you from your best chance at survival? I don't know. I wasn't me in that situation. I don't know what I would have done, but I feel like I've seen a couple dead bodies by that point. I'm going to want to get out of there more than anything else. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I never find out. So then we get Alice, my goodness, hiding in a building. She's got a gun, but she doesn't have any bullets for it. She's bluffing Mrs. Voorhees, pointing the gun towards her, hoping that's going to scare her off. It doesn't. So then she tries to like beat her with the gun. That doesn't work. And then she's backing up and like looking for things to throw at her. And one of the things that she throws at her is just this big thing of twine. And so I just wrote down the gut.
I have a reminder for Sam Tom.
That's my Google reminding me to get something for my dogs. So I wrote down the gun didn't work. Use twine. And it was I get it. You're just going to throw everything you can find in the moment. That's fine. It's just, I thought it was really funny that after trying to bludgeon her with a gun and that failing, throw a teeny tiny rope, basically. Again, these aren't really problems. They're just kind of funny things that I noticed. We've got, the full moon has a bit of a presence in this movie. And one of the cops at one point mentions, well, things are always worse on the full moon, blah, 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 and the full moon is bad, and we always get more accidents and everything, and Steve is like, you're finding these coincidences because you're looking for them, right? And again, this isn't something that I remember in the sequels, and I'm curious, I'm like, does that actually have anything to play, anything to do with the supernatural element of this story? Or was it just a coincidence that in this first one, it happened to be a full moon? I don't know. And then I wrote down, what an ending, because that was one of the few things that I remembered, is that Alice is out there on the lake, the music, peaceful, serene. We know the end of the movie is coming up. The cops are there. She made it, finally. Oh my goodness, this is great. And then Jason comes out of the water and drags her down. And then that turns out to be a dream. But still, what a great ending. What a way to leave him wanting more. So, I've got to hold off, though. I can't watch the other 9 movies. Is that accurate? In this series. I got to wait until the next Friday the 13th. So, I didn't have a ton unique things to say on this one, I feel like, because it's like the first one. I feel like this is the one that people know the most about. So, hopefully, moving forward in this series, I'll pick up on some things that I'm not as familiar with. But that's going to do it for part 1 of my who knows how long it will last Friday the 13th series. Let me know what thoughts you have. That's everything that I've got. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.